In today's video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of the Math No Calculator section from the March 2020 SAT. I've scored perfectly on back-to-back SAT math sections, and as I go through this section, I'm going to show you the most efficient way to answer each and every question. So with all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get started with question number 1. The table above shows some values of x and their corresponding values of y. Which of the following equations shows a possible relationship between x and y? Well, we see that our y-intercept we know will come when x is 0, and when x is 0, we have a y value of 2. So we're going to look for an equation with a y-intercept of 2, and we see that we have that in answer choice A. We also see that we have a slope of 1 because as we go increase by 1x, we increase by 1 with our y, so our answer here is going to be A. All right, moving on to number 2. In the figure shown, line J is parallel to line K, and line L is parallel to line M. What is the value of x? Well, in order to solve for x here, what we want to find is its corresponding angle. Now, we know that this angle 40 has a vertical angle with our angle that I'm marking in blue here. Okay, so we know we'll also have a 40 there. The next thing we see is that our angle x, which I'm marking in orange, is also going to correspond to our angle of 40, which I'm also marking in orange. Since they correspond, they're going to be the same angle measure. Therefore, our answer for number 2 has to be answer choice A. All right, moving on to number 3. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 6. What is the value of f of 4? Well, since we're solving for f of 4 here, all we're doing is plugging in 4 for x. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, when we plug in 4 for x, we'll have 4 squared minus 5 times 4, and then plus 6. We know 4 squared gives us 16, and then we'll have minus 5 times 4, which will give us minus 20, and then plus 6, which when we do this, we're going to end up with 22 minus 20, which is going to give us 2. So our answer here is going to be B. All right, moving on to number 4 now. Arceli can spend up to a total of $20 on streamers and balloons for a party. Streamers cost $1.49 per pack and balloons cost $4.39 per pack. Which of the following inequalities represents the situation where S is the number of packs of streamers Arceli can buy and B is the number of packs of balloons Arceli can buy? Assume there's no sales tax. Well, we know that he can't spend any more than 20, right? He can spend up to a total of 20, so it's got to be less than or equal to 20. Therefore, we can go ahead and get rid of C and we can go ahead and get rid of D because they have the wrong sign. Next thing we look at is we're not subtracting our cost times balloon. We are adding that. We need to add the two costs together, and since we're adding our two costs together, our answer for number 4 has to be B. All right, moving on to number 5. It says Bill is planning to drive 1,000 miles to visit his family. If he plans to drive 250 miles per day, which of the following represents the remaining distance, D, keep in mind it's remaining distance, in miles that Bill has to drive to reach his family after driving for N days? Well, we know before he starts driving at all, he has 1,000. Okay, so we'll have D equals 1,000 to start. Then the amount that he has remaining to travel will be that minus 250 times N days because he's traveling that 250 miles each day. So our answer here is going to be answer choice D. Okay, we see answer choices A, B, and C do not match our correct equation. All right, moving on to question number 6 now. Question 6 says, which of the following is equivalent to the given expression? So we've got x cubed and then plus x, that's in parentheses, and to that we are adding x squared and then also our minus x. So if we're going to go ahead and add our terms together, we see we only have one x cubed term, so we have x cubed, it has to be there. Next thing that we see is we have plus x, and we also have minus x, so our x will cancel there, and then we'll just have a plus x squared. So we're going to end up with x cubed plus x squared, which is going to be answer choice C. All right, let's go ahead and do number 7. So number 7 says the table gives some values of x and the corresponding values of f of x for the polynomial function f. Which of the following could be the graph of f in the xy plane where y is equal to f of x? The first thing I'm going to do is check my y-intercept. My y-intercept is where x is 0, and I see that my y-intercept then must be at 2. Now, keep in mind here, you got to pay close attention to the scale when dealing with graphs like these. I see that each line in the y direction as well as the x direction represents an increase of 2. So I got to keep in mind these lines are dealing in increments of 2 rather than 1, which you're typically used to. All right, so I need to find my graphs where I have y-intercept at 2. If any of them don't have a y-intercept at 2, I can get rid of them. In answer choice A, I see my y-intercept's at 2, and B, I see my y-intercept's at 2, and C, I see it's at 0, so C will be incorrect. And then in D, I see my y-intercept's at 2. From here, I'm going to find the next point that looks the most difference between the 3 answer choices I have left, and I see that that's at -1. At -1, I have 4 in A, but I see from my table at -1, I need to have 3. So A will be incorrect because at -1, that has a value for f of x of 4. Then I look at B, I see at -1, I have an f of x value of right around 1, which is incorrect as well. Then answer choice D has to be my correct answer by process of elimination, and if I look at its value at -1, I see it is at 3. Therefore, I know D will be my correct answer. All right, moving on to number 8. So we have which of the following expressions is equivalent to the given expression where x cannot equal -2? Key thing to understand here is since we have x plus 2 up top, x plus 2 in parentheses squared could be rewritten as this. Getting rid of that squared, we would just have another x plus 2 out here. From there, we see that we can just go ahead and cancel our x plus 2 in our numerator, put a 1 there, cancel our x plus 2 in our denominator, put a 1 there, and we're just going to end up with 1 over x plus 2, which we see is going to be answer choice B. All right, moving on to number 9. Which of the following is an equation of the line in the xy plane that contains the points 1, 3, and 5, and 15? Okay, key thing I'm going to look at first off is finding my slope. So I see as I go from 1 to 5, my x is going to increase by 4. And as I go from 3 to 15, then my y is going to increase by 12. So that's my slope there, which I see will equal 3. So the 3 is going to equal my slope, which I'll call m. Next thing from here, I see that my only answer choice with a slope of 3 is actually going to be answer choice A. So I actually already know my answer choice here is going to be A. If you want to verify with your y-intercept, you can. You see that if you went back 3 from the point 1, 3, you would have a y-intercept of 0. So obviously you see your answer there is going to be A. But you can just stop once you get the right slope because you see all the other answer choices other than A have the incorrect slope. All right, moving on to number 10. In the given equation, B is a constant. If the equation has infinitely many solutions, which is the key part to this question, what is the value of B? In order for there to be infinitely many solutions, the slopes of these two equations have to equal and the y-intercepts of the two equations have to equal. Anytime you need infinitely many solutions, that means those equations have to be the same. So in order for these equations to be the same, we see that we've got the same slope already. Now we just got to solve for our B value. We see our y-intercept on our right side of our equations plus 8. We have to have that same y-intercept on our left side, which therefore means that B is going to have to be 16 because 16 over 2 is going to equal 8. So our answer here is going to be answer choice D. All right, moving on to number 11. What is the area in square units of the figure shown? Key thing here to solve this area, we need to split this up into two shapes. So when we do this, we see we're going to have a square, which I'm going to go ahead and just mark in blue. Now this square is 4 by 4, which gives it an area of 16. Now obviously that's going to be square units, okay? And then next thing we have to do is solve for the area of our triangle, which I'm going to put in orange here. Now we see that we have our height of our triangle already in 4 because of that square. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to solve for this length right here that I'm marking in orange. Now with that, we can just take that 7, subtract 4 from that side length of that square, and that's going to leave us with 3 as our side length. So now we have 3 as our base, 4 as our height. We know that the formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So to solve for our area, we do 1/2 times our base of 3 times our height of 4. That's going to be half of 12, which will give us 6. Okay, so now we have our areas. We have our area of 6 and our area of 16. We just add those two areas together, and we're going to get 22 as our answer. So our answer for 11 is going to be B. All right, moving on to number 12 now. We've got what is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals 4 to the power of x in the xy plane. Key thing to understand here is that with any non-zero number, I'm going to write this out because it's really important you know this, with any non-zero number, so any non-zero number raised to the power of 0, so raised to the power of 0, is going to equal 1. So if I have, for example, in this case, 4 to the power of 0, that's going to equal 1. If I had 6 to the power of 0, that's going to equal 1. If I had 1 to the power of 0, that's going to equal 1. Okay, so keep in mind any non-zero number raised to the power of 0 is going to equal 1. In this case, since we're finding our y-intercept, we have to plug in 0 for x. 4 to the 0 power we know is going to equal 1. Therefore, our y-intercept is going to occur at 0 and 1. Another thing too, you can actually just solve this one really quickly by understanding that with a y-intercept, your x-coordinate has to be 0. So since you know it's asking you for your y-intercept and you know your x-coordinate has to be 0, you could just go ahead and answer C without even knowing what your y-intercept actually equaled, just because you know your y-intercept occurs when x is 0. But I wanted to show you how to solve that just in case there was ever a situation where multiple answer choices have 0 as their x-coordinate. All right, moving on to number 13. We've got what is the sum of the solutions to the given equation? All right, I'm going to show you something you can use to solve this question really quick. So first thing that you're going to want to do is get this all set equal to 0. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and subtract 2x from each side. We're also going to have to subtract 1 from each side. When we do that, we're going to be left then with x squared minus 16x plus 39 is equal to 0. All right, now from here, we see that we can't factor it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the quadratic formula. But I'm going to show you something that's going to help you solve this really quick. Instead of dealing with the square root of b squared minus 4ac, we don't have to worry about that. Now the reason we only have to worry about the value of negative b over 2a here is because we need the sum of the solutions. Okay, so keep in mind with the sum of the solutions, we don't have to worry about our plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a because we're going to add it to 1, but we're going to subtract it from the other. And since we need the sum, they're just going to cancel. So keep in mind, if you're ever dealing with the sum of the solutions and you're using the quadratic formula, all that you need to worry about is the negative b over 2a. In this case, we see our b value is negative 16, so negative 16 is going to give us a positive 16. Our a value is 1, so we have 16 over 2. Now keep in mind here, the sum of our solutions means that we're going to have 2 of these. So we have to multiply it by 2 to get the sum of the solutions, and then we see our answer here is going to be D. All right, so that's a trick there that you can use to save time. Hopefully that explanation was useful for you. And now let's go ahead and move on to number 14. So what I see immediately when I take a look at 14 is that I've got one variable set equal to all the others in my answer choices. Now, what told me that I had to glance at my answer choices here? Well, it's the fact that in my equation, I have 4 variables, right? Anytime I've got 3 or more variables and it's in an equation up top, that's an indicator to me I want to glance at my answer choices, see if I'm just rearranging. Now, because I know I'm just rearranging, I don't have to read most of this paragraph. The only thing that I'm going to read here is that last sentence to make sure that I am indeed just rearranging variables. It says which of the following gives the speed of the object in terms of the other quantities. That's telling me I just got to rearrange this. So to do that, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each side by s. That way I can get that square root isolated. From there, I'm going to go ahead and square each side. So I'll have L over s squared, as well as everything underneath that square root getting squared. Now from there, I'm going to end up with L squared over s squared is equal to 1 minus v squared over c squared. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and add v squared over c squared to each side. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because that way I can go ahead and keep my v squared positive. I don't have to deal with a negative there. All right, so once I do that, keep in mind that I've got L squared over s squared. Okay, so that L, it's not a c, it's an L. Now, that's going to all be set equal to 1. All right, from here, I want to go ahead and start isolating my v. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and subtract L squared plus s squared from each side. So subtracting L squared plus subtracting L squared over s squared from each side. Now when I do that, I see that I'm going to end up getting that v squared over c squared is equal to 1 minus L squared over s squared. Next thing I got to do is I got to multiply everything on my right side of the equation by c squared to solve for v squared. So when I do that, I'm going to end up with c squared times 1 minus L squared over s squared. Okay, and that's also going to cancel my c squared from my left side. Now from here, all I got to do is square root each side to solve for v. Now when I square root each side, I see that what I'm going to have then is v is equal to, I can pull out my c from my square root, and then I'll have c times the square root of 1 minus L squared, 1 minus L squared over s squared. And I see the only answer choice that matches mine then is going to be answer choice A, so A will be my correct answer there. All right, moving on to number 15 now. The half-life of a certain substance in an aquatic environment is about 150 years. Which of the following exponential functions best models the amount A of t in grams of the substance that remains t years after 200 grams of the substance is applied to the aquatic environment? The half-life is the length of time needed for an amount of the substance to decrease to 1/2 of that amount. All right, so key things to understand here is that our number in front of our parentheses is going to be our starting amount. We know our starting amount is going to be 200 grams of the substance. Therefore, we can go ahead and get rid of answer choices A and B. Next thing we see is that answer choices C and D, they each have the correct factor of 1/2 in our parentheses, which is because we are going to decrease or by a factor of 1/2 after we reach that 150 years for that half-life. So now the next thing we have to take a look at is our exponents. Keep in mind that once 150 years have gone by, that's when the amount is half of what it initially was. So we need that 1/2 to be raised to the first power. We need 1/2, and I'm just going to write this out. We need 1/2 to be raised to the first power after 150 years. In order for this to be true, we need to have then 1/2 to the power of t over 150, because we know 150 over 150 is 1. Therefore, our answer has to be answer choice D. All right, moving on to the free response section now. All right, so we got number 16, the graph of y equals mx plus b, where m and b are constants, is shown as the xy plane. What is the value of m? So the value of m here is going to be our slope. We see as we go over by 1, we're going up by 2, so the value of m is going to be 2. 2 will be our correct answer for 16. Number 17, if xy is the solution to the given equations above, what is the value of y? I've got 2x in my bottom equation, so I'm going to multiply my top equation by 2x and then subtract my bottom equation from it. That's going to isolate y, allow me to solve it really easily. So I'm going to have 2x minus 2x, my x's will cancel. Then I'll have 2y minus no y, so I'll just have 2y. Then I'll have 2 times 5, which is 10. 10 minus 5 will leave me with 5, so I've got 2y equals 5. Divide each side by 2, and I'm going to get y is equal to 5 over 2 as my answer. All right, so 17, pretty easy there, just recognizing that stacked equation setup. Number 18, what positive value of x satisfies the equation above? I see it's set equal to 0. Since it's set equal to 0, I need either my factors in blue or my parentheses in orange here, I need one of those two to equal 0. Now, since my value of x has to be positive, I see my answer here is going to have to be 3. Now, the reason it's got to be 3 is because I see 3 minus 3 is going to give me 0, which ultimately will give me my correct answer, right? If I was to use a -1 plus 1, I can't because it has to be a positive value of x. So my answer there has got to be 3. All right, moving on to number 19. What value of x satisfies the equation above? Key thing here is just solving for x, right? So we're going to add 0.6 to each side, add 0.6 to each side, and we're going to end up with 2.4 is equal to 3x. Now, from here, we can go ahead and divide each side by 3. Divide each side by 3, and we see we're going to get an answer of 0.8 then. Okay, you could do 0.8. You could also write it as 4 over 5. Either answer choice would be correct. And then now we can go and move on to number 20. So number 20 is probably one of the most difficult on this section, but I'm going to show you how you can solve it pretty easy. So we have a square is inscribed in a circle with a radius 6 times the square root of 2 inches. What is the perimeter of the square in inches? All right, well, let's go ahead and just draw this out, as can be helpful when dealing with a geometry problem. So that's going to be my circle right there. I'll put my square in orange. Let's go ahead and put our square in orange. All right. So we're going to pretend that that orange square is a perfect square. I know that it's not perfectly drawn, but we're going to pretend that it's a perfect square. Key thing that we have to understand here, our radius is going to intersect the corners of our square. Okay, when we do that, we know the value of our radius, which is going to give us 2 side lengths of our triangle. Our radius is 6 times the square root of 2. We also know that we have right angles in each of these triangles here. Okay, we've got a right angle. Now from here, we also see we have an isosceles triangle, okay, because both of those side lengths, other than our hypotenuse, are the same length. Therefore, we know that we've got a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now, if you know anything about 45, 45, 90 triangles, you know that the value of the hypotenuse is going to be, if we have each side length being x, is going to be x times the square root of 2. Therefore, we know that the value, which I'm going to put in green here, of our hypotenuse is going to be 6 root 2 times root 2, which is going to be 6 times 2, which is going to give us 12. Okay, so that's going to give us 12. Now that we've solved for that side length, we know that all the side lengths are the same because it's a square. We add all our side lengths up to get our perimeter. It's going to be 12 times 4, which will give us 48 as our correct answer. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, make sure to like and subscribe. In addition to that, if you're looking for private SAT tutoring, college essay editing, or college admissions consulting, be sure to check out my website. The link is in the description. Additionally, if you're gaining value from my channel and from my content, please consider donating. It helps me to be able to continue to put out these videos for free.